First of all, I just want to say what an honor it is to be here with you talking about the great work you've done that's literally revolutionized the way we view our closest cousins, the chimpanzees, and all the great apes, and for that matter, really all the animals on the planet and all the work you do for conservation. Just last night, watched your new documentary, Jane, for the first time, and I have to say, a couple of teary moments in there. I don't know how you were able to do some of those things, particularly McGregor when he died from polio, and Flint, and it really showed the emotions and the personalities of some of these apes. What was that like, experiencing their lives with them at that time?
Well, the two incidents you mentioned, the polio epidemic and little Flint dying of grief, even though he was 8 years old when he lost his mother. It was as though he just couldn't live without her. And in a state of grief, he fell sick and died. And the other shocking thing was the war between neighboring communities, made particularly awful because it was like a civil war. The main community divided. The larger part then began to systematically hunt down and kill those who had moved away. And they'd fed with them, groomed with them, played with them. It was shocking.
And this wasn't just a few chimps dying in this, right? This was many.
Yes, there were 7 males who moved down there and all were killed.
Wow. Your fascination with Africa and animals started from childhood, right? This was not something you learned in an academic profession. Describe how that connection started with a girl in England.
Well, I was born loving animals. I had a supportive mother, which made a huge difference. And she didn't get mad at me when she found I'd taken earthworms to bed and things like that. And so when I was 10, I read Tarzan, fell in love with this glorious Lord of the Jungle, who obviously married the wrong Jane, but
yeah.
That's when my dream began. I would grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. And everybody laughed.
Yeah.
How would I do that?
Except for your mother.
Except for her.
And she was so supportive that she went with you to Africa, because you had to have a companion at the time?
I was not allowed to be alone. It was part of the British Empire, the crumbling British Empire at that time, and they wouldn't allow me to go alone.
Take us from how you were in England and you had this dream and a supportive mother, didn't have a lot of money. How do you end up in Africa in this situation studying chimps? How did that dream become possible?
Well, I left school, I did well, but we didn't have enough money for university, and you couldn't get scholarships in those days unless you were good in a foreign language. I don't know why, but anyway. And we had just enough money for a secretarial course, and I had a job in London, and then I got a letter from a school friend inviting me for a holiday. Her parents had just bought a farm. So to get the necessary money, I went home and worked in a hotel around the corner as a waitress, which, by the way, is jolly hard work. And then finally I had enough. Had to go by boat because there were no planes going back and forth. We're going back to 1957.
Yeah.
And stayed with my friend, and then heard about Dr. Louis Leakey. And somebody said, if you're interested in animals, you should meet him. So I went to the Natural History Museum and met him. And that led to him offering me this extraordinary opportunity to go and study wild chimpanzees.
Why do you think he chose you when there's a whole host of people with fancy academic degrees at the time?
Well, first of all, there wasn't really anybody much out studying in the field. They were mostly studying animals in lab situations or zoos or something like that. He wanted a mind, as he put it, uncluttered by the academic theory of the time, which was very arrogant, and insisted that there was a difference in kind between us and all the other animals. And he also felt women made better observers, were more patient. And so it was an advantage to me not to have a degree, and it was an advantage to be a woman.
So that is interesting, because he also chose women to study orangutans and gorillas.
That's right, Garuta and Diane.
It took some time, and you only initially had 6 months before the money would run out, right? And you didn't make progress instantly with the chimps.
No, they ran away as soon as they saw this peculiar white ape, because we are the 5th great ape. Mm-hmm. You know, we're so close, like genetically we differ from chimps by only just over 1%.
And probably were a danger to them? Was there bushmeat hunting at the time?
No, there was no hunting there. It was just that chimpanzees are very conservative and they are fearful of new objects.
So finally, a chimp who remained one of your favorites,
David
David Greybeard,
Greybeard.
kind of established the connection.
Well, he began to lose his fear and he let me come closer and closer. And then if he was in a group that was all ready to run, but David was sitting there calmly, I suppose they began to realize that I was okay after all. And it was almost as though he introduced me to his friends in the forest.
Yeah, this is my albino ape, yeah. One of the first discoveries you made was tool making among the chimps, is that correct?
David Greybeard again.
Yeah. Why is that so revolutionary? Because they're not using Stone Age tools like we are using. They're pretty simple.
It was thought at that time that only humans used and made tools. Tool making was the real criteria that defined us as human. And so I saw David Greybeard break off stems, use them to fish for termites, but then he also broke off leafy twigs and had to remove the leaves or any side twigs to make this tool. And as we were at that time defined as man, the tool maker, when I told Louis Leakey, he said, well, we shall have to redefine tool, redefine man, or accept chimpanzees as humans.
Yeah. And I know you lived through the horrors of World War II. The Holocaust had particularly affected you, and that you initially thought that chimps were nicer versions of us, and you found out that wasn't the case.
Yeah, they can be extremely brutal. And the best example of that was the hunting down of their erstwhile friends in what I called the 4-year war. And it was just, you know, these were gang attacks, savage, and they left the victims to die of wounds received. It was even the older females were attacked.
Wow, and children too.
No, the young females who hadn't yet had a child were actually, the males tried to take them back to increase their gene pool. They were not killing infants at that time.
Did you face resistance initially with your findings? Because these were quite revolutionary at the time.
Oh, I got to Cambridge because Leakey said I had to get a degree and there was no time for a BA. So he got me a place to study in Cambridge to do a PhD in ethology, and I didn't even know what ethology meant, which is the study of behavior. And I was told, first of all, I shouldn't have given the chimps names. That wasn't at all scientific. I should have given them numbers. And I couldn't talk about them having personalities, minds, or emotions. Those were unique to us. But fortunately, as a child, I had a teacher who had taught me that however erudite these professors were, in this respect, they were wrong, and that teacher was my dog.
And you basically discovered the opposite of all those things.
Exactly. And now you can actually get a PhD studying personality, mind, and emotion. And especially in the field of animal intelligence, the doors are wide open. Mm-hmm. Very exciting to be a young person wanting to study animal intelligence.
So there's been a lot of progress in 50, 60 years on that front, but we've also done just an incredible amount of harm to the planet. I think people think of the destruction of some of these habitats and species as being a long-term thing, but a lot of it has happened just since the 60s.
Yes, it's happened since World War II, really. And there's been this materialistic development and this desperate search for oil and gas, for minerals, for timber. And it is causing absolute havoc in so many parts of the world. And, you know, there's a saying, we haven't inherited this planet from our parents, we borrowed it from our children, but we've been stealing their future. And it's not just the animals who are suffering as habitats are destroyed, it's us too. And look at what we're doing to the farmland, the poisons, the chemicals that we're spraying on our food. And look at the intensive farming and all the environmental destruction and harm to human health, never mind the cruelty to the animals. I mean, it's terrible what we're doing.
And by all measures, it's considered we are now in a 6th mass extinction, the only one caused by human beings and other species. We recently had the death of Sudan, the northern white rhino. It's just another vivid example of how much on the brink a lot of species are. Where are chimpanzees on that threat level right now?
Oh, in most of the countries where they live, they're highly threatened, endangered. The Gombe chimps wouldn't be there if I hadn't gone. And the way that the Jane Goodall Institute works to conserve chimps now in 7 African countries is to work with the local people to improve their lives, to work with them until they become our partners in conservation. Because if the people on the ground don't care, then there's no point in creating national parks, because at some point they'll just break the barriers. And you know, this costs a lot of money, and so what's the point of doing any of it if we're not educating young people to be better stewards than we've been? And that's our Roots and Shoots program, now in 100 countries.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about that. Describe a little bit how that got started and how it's grown really all over the world.
Yeah, it started with 12 high school students in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania who were worried about the state of things around them. And as I was traveling around the world trying to raise awareness and money, I was meeting many young people also concerned about what was happening to the planet, the thoughtful high school, university. And many of them had lost hope. And they basically said to me, you know, you've compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. So we have compromised their future. But I do believe there's a window of time, and there are some scientists who agree with me with scientific fact. I'm just optimistic. I don't know how big a window of time we have, but Roots and Shoots has a main message that every single individual makes a difference every single day. We can choose what kind of difference we make, and a lot of people are aware of the problems but don't know what to do. They feel helpless and hopeless, so they do nothing. And it's true, if I think about the consequences of my choices each day, what I eat, what I wear, if I turn lights out, that sort of thing, it wouldn't make any difference. But when there's 1 million people all making ethical choices, then it's going to start making a difference. And when it's 1 billion, even more of a difference. So that's the main message of Roots and Shoots. But every group chooses for itself 3 different projects. 1 to help people, 1 to help animals, 1 to help the environment. Because everything is interconnected. And because they choose these projects themselves, they're in 100 countries. There's about 150,000 groups, and a group can be the whole school. We have members in preschool, kindergarten, university, and everything in between.
Incredible. So it isn't all gloom and doom, as you talked about. You have kind of your 5 reasons for hope, because a lot of us, you know, studying climate change, I see that some of it is irreversible at this point, but there is something that all of us can do. What are those 5 glimmers of hope for you?
I think climate change is irreversible, but we can slow it down.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to get as bad as it could. If we carry on with business as usual, then that is the end of the world as we know it. But my reasons for hope are first the young people, because when they know the problems and we listen to them and we empower them to take action, they're changing the world as we speak. You know, we've got about 2,000 groups right across China, same number across North America, and growing all around the world. And so they're my greatest reason for hope. And then secondly, there's this brain. We're coming up with more and more innovative solutions, technological solutions, like solar, wind power, and so forth. Also making better choices in our own individual lives. And then there's the resilience of nature, so that places we've utterly destroyed can be given another chance. And the green and the life, and the animals, and the insects can return. It won't be as it was, but it can still support life. I've seen many places like that. And, you know, we're always restoring rivers, and you know it, right across the US. And animals on the brink of extinction can be given another chance. Not when there's none left, but there were 2 birds, 1 male and 1 female. Only 1 male and 1 fertile female in the entire world. There's the black robin in New Zealand. And there's now about 700 of them spread of the, because of one man. One man decided he would not let this black robin become extinct. And it's a great story, which we don't have time for. And then the social media. For the first time in history, we can bring the voices together of people around the world who care about something like climate change or trophy hunting or, you know, the extinction of elephants and rhinos. And as these voices get more and more and louder, in the end, big business and government will have to listen, as I hope they're going to listen to the demonstrations around the country about guns in America and school shootings, which is awful.
Yeah, exactly.
And then finally, there's what I call the indomitable human spirit, the people who tackle what seems impossible and won't give in and succeed. And my hope is the fact that I go around the world, I see all the bad things, but I see amazing projects and I meet incredible people.
So for people like me who kind of want to follow in your footsteps in terms of making a big impact on the planet, what are one or two pieces of advice you might give?
Well, the one is just to think about what you do each day and, you know, how you live your life and what sort of ecological footprint are you making. And it's so easy to feel, oh, I can't be bothered, it doesn't really make any difference. But, you know, when 1 million people all feel it doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't make any difference, the world just goes down.
Well, look what one girl did from England over the course of time. Now, you said you didn't have a foreign language, but you actually do kind of speak chimpanzee, right?
But I didn't then.
But you learned it. Could you teach me maybe a couple greetings or sounds that they would make that are symbolic of something?
The close-up greeting would be, but at the same time, I'm the female, I might reach my hand out nervously and you might pat it.
Okay.
That's right. No, you.
I wouldn't say
the male,
anything.
no, it's only the female. That's a submissive sound.
I like this world. The women are in charge.
Yes. And then if I'm an infant who's lost his or her mother, or if they want to suckle and they're not allowed to. And then there's laughing when they tickle each other.
Not any different than us. Really.
And then there's the distance greeting.
Close?
It's all one.
Would they run away?
It's panting. It's like panting.
Okay.
Not bad.
Close?
Yeah.
I'll get the hang of it.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.